Okay, so 5:32, calling the Economic Development Commission Thursday, October 5th. In session, roll call, Robert Boris, Commissioner. Bill Groves, Commissioner.
George Mathon, Commissioner.
Who's Commissioner?
Suzanne Ellery, Commissioner.
Okay, are there any public communications?
No one specifically here unless you wanted to say something, John. And there's no. Did you want to speak in public communications or?
There, my schedule worked out to be here. I have another meeting at 7.
In other words. Okay.
I will just mention that.
Sure.
I hope with the property reuse policy having been adopted, I hope to call a committee meeting first to get Groton Heights and Pleasant Valley kicked off again over the next couple of weeks. Probably some initial talking on this week.
Great, thanks. And there's no one else on at this point. So,
okay. Everyone have a copy of the minutes? Are there any changes? Anybody have any corrections? Anything? Motion to approve.
second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Passes. Okay, all business outreach.
Yeah, see if I can talk to this.
I don't mind getting.
So Suzanne was not available for our business outreach subcommittee this month. So we ended up not holding it. So just to follow on this month, we've got the cards are available. Everybody's welcome to take those. We've got the links for we send folks to the grotonbusiness.com where they can do the survey, register, and resources. We've got the link where where the commission members can do the report. And there's an outreach, an up-to-date outreach summary in the EDC packet. So we'll have that printed for every subcommittee meeting as it gets updated, as well as for every EDC meeting. And then we also provided the lists of kind of that top 500 of businesses that we should be reaching out to. We provided that list to you guys. So that's where we're at right now. If you guys want to take the next subcommittee meeting and kind of hone that, or a subcommittee meeting, we'll talk about what else needs to happen. But right now, you guys are equipped to keep moving forward.
Sam, were you able to give us access to other people's surveys so we can take a look like live and know, like, for example, if I want to go downtown to the bridge, if Joe's gone there yesterday, I wouldn't go there. Like, do we have that access for us, the rest of us?
No, I don't have that technically resolved right now. So okay. It's something that I can look.
But you're looking into it
as it stands.
Okay.
Just the update you'll get at on the monthly, twice a month. But I will see what we can do.
Okay. Thank you.
And I just want to again acknowledge everything you're doing. I'm so grateful for you running the subcommittee, and here for it to come to the next one. Be out there. I made a couple dings on the list since the last time, and I commit to do that. And if we could all get out there, do our outreach, kind of connect with businesses, and appreciate what you're doing.
Do you have anything you want to report from your meeting with the owner of Pedigo? I mean, I know it's maybe it's an example. I don't know.
It was we had a good conversation.
I didn't hear with who.
So one of the businesses I met with was the owner of Pedigo, they're moving from the location, and so we just discussed. He had when he selected the spot, he thought because it was near Bluff Point, there was going to be more of a rental traffic. He was kind of counting on it being a little more, that being augmenting a lot of the maintenance and repair kind of stuff for the bikes. And because there wasn't a lot of traffic at the bikes, that didn't pan out. So he's looking for another location. Of course, I told him I'd get Paige to talk to him and we'll find another place in Groton somewhere. The other thing was interesting. He explained the dealership requirements for Pedigo. You're not allowed to represent other bikes, so you can't be a bike shop. So it's kind of prohibitive for the model for what he did, but yeah, so that was the general feedback. Try to keep him in town somewhere. But yeah.
Thanks.
They are good bikes. I have one.
Yeah.
Yeah, my wife got the aquamarine.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a nice one.
I love them. I have one too, especially with the battery that slides
Yeah.
out. I think it's the way they're set up is great, but it's a shame that you didn't stick around. You know, it's a hard business, even though we're transitioning to e-bikes, state and things, I think.
Competition stuff, and all the different bike tailors are also doing electric bikes and the different Trek brand and blah, blah. So
Yeah.
the rental market is an interesting niche, and he just has to find the right location. That is not ideally.
That area he thought was going to be, he thought it was a good location for that, but it just didn't have that kind of a traffic for it.
Downtown Mystic would be perfect.
Yeah,
You got a
I didn't
chance.
know that was just so damn expensive for something like that. It's,
Yeah.
no like maybe.
Yeah.
You got the Esker Point parking, you know, for people to come in and I know the market for rental kayaks has, you know, both on the river and also in there has grown for people coming in saying, hey, this is something different. You just drive down to Esker Point, you got the beach, you bike, you know. So.
Yeah, and he was saying, you know, if you only put like 10 miles a year on your bike, you're not going to tune it up every year. So that was the other thing, you know, he didn't see people putting the mileage on them. So it was I learned a lot about the business model and, you know.
Thanks.
Any other old business? Anything else? Okay, new business. I reached out to Walker Potts and asked him to come and speak to us about the Naval Consortium, what they're doing, give us a little overview and sort of us kind of have a conversation about how maybe we can tie in and help support if you want to come join us. And I'm very grateful for your time and
Well, thanks very much. I appreciate it. It's been a little bit of a circus trying to coordinate it, but I'm glad we made it happen.
Yeah.
So my name is Walker Potts. For those of you who don't know me, I run the Naval and Maritime Consortium. George, we're very familiar with one another. George predates me at the NMC, but the NMC was initially developed kind of out of the brainchild of a lot of folks from UConn, Micah Corsi, some of the other folks in the engineering department there, folks from EB and kind of the senior C-suite of Electric Boat, some folks from the Navy, and then obviously a lot of economic development type folks that recognize that as the demand for nuclear subs from the U.S., namely the addition of one boat to the Virginia class subs, the Fast Attack, and the lead boat and the development and production of Columbia class, which is going to, you know, the first round, which obviously I'm sure many of y'all know is, you know, going to be a big part of the industry around here for the next few decades to come. But the idea was that with the demand being placed on the supply chain for componentry, assemblies, engineering, manufacturing of all different flavors and shapes, it would be beneficial to have some sort of an organization that could represent the small to medium manufacturers that are responsible for a growing percentage of the componentry supply to Electric Boat. And, you know, the exact numbers are tough to pin down, but EB used to produce a lot of their stuff in-house, the majority of their stuff in-house. And as they're going from one sub a year, buying from suppliers that they know how to interact with, and they know what their capacities are, and they know their capabilities, their security requirements and all that, to all of a sudden expanding somewhere to the tune of between 300 to 500% of not just nuts, bolts, washers, flanges, pipes, but complex assemblies. You know, just like the aerospace industry went from you know, Lockheed building their, you know, F-16 landing gear in-house, and they would buy every nut and bolt component of that, and then assemble it in-house. And you've got obviously many contracts to deal with that. Now EB and Newport News similarly are looking at how they can push more complex assemblies, larger components, and basically bigger asks on the supply chain. And that comes with a whole slew of challenges, not least of which is workforce, you know, where the people, you know, and 85% of welders that are qualified to NAVSEA spec are aging out in the next 5 years. How are you going to replace that workforce? in that same vein, technology plays a big role. Can you replace what would have been the stream, the pipeline of skilled labor that we've had for the last, or missing for the last 35 years? Can you augment some of that with automated welding processes or mechanized welding processes, and kind of augment that with technological solutions? So we as the NMC have a great relationship with EB and a growing relationship with the federal government, NAVC. And then with that also, this sort of was paralleled by the advent of offshore wind coming online. And we recognize that the same manufacturing community that was well positioned to coordinate and collaborate and sort of strategize on how to actually meet the challenge of supporting the submarine industrial base was probably well equipped to look at providing solutions for the offshore wind industry, both in terms of component supply, operations and maintenance, quality standards, contract management, all the things that we haven't yet figured out how to do with offshore wind. It's obviously an evolving challenge. But we try to focus basically most of our efforts around a handful of kind of thrusts. And, with what we're doing right now, we've just gotten a DoD appropriations request in for fiscal year 24. It made it past the Senate bill. We're now waiting on this whole government shutdown and everything to actually get the DoD appropriations bill to the House floor for a vote. And that's for a pretty substantial sum of money. That doesn't require a match. And that's obviously, because it's a DoD appropriations line item, is thrust in the direction of the submarine industrial base. We're doing another proposal that's more, I'd say, offshore wind and commercial maritime oriented. And that's basically the same thing. It's replace submarines and all of these things with offshore wind or shipbuilding or surveying. And in a lot of ways, they're parallel. But what we see as the kind of major thrust areas are what I refer to as the technological connective tissue of the supply chain. Right now, I think it comes from 100-year-old industrial base supporting the submarine, and EB, the supply chain that supports them. It's been very siloed, very compartmentalized, very disparate, and highly competitive, because I think it's been a buyer's market, right? For submarine componentry. They've had people knocking at the door for 1,000 years saying, hey, we'd love to get involved in this business. And they could sort of pick and choose. Now the balance has sort of shifted where you've got, they're desperate for more suppliers, but they need to be qualified suppliers. They need to have cybersecurity requirements. They need to actually be able to do the job. They need to meet really stringent quality and ITAR and all sorts of other qualifications that don't, create a pretty high barrier to entry for someone to go from building, treadmills or pipe hangers to all of a sudden jumping into, sub-safe level 1 qualifications that are going to be, life critical components for submarine. So we try to focus primarily on 5 thrust areas. One, and this basically reflects our DoD appropriations ask. We're made up of about 100 and some odd members, community partners, members being manufacturers and affiliated professional services, community partners being other nonprofits, municipalities, and universities and academic institutions. The 5 thrust areas that we've included in our DoD appropriations bill are basically the technological connective tissue that allows for better OEM, electric boat type organizations, as well as Huntington Ingalls, Newport News, some of the other big OEMs to include aerospace, but primarily in this situation, EV. And that's like our supplier capabilities database and other technological solutions, one of which is a capacity dashboard that allows basically EB to say, instead of doing all this manually, saying, hey, do you have capacity to turn this part on your VTL, and making 100 phone calls for that. We're basically trying to create a dashboard that reaches into the ERP systems of each of those manufacturers, and on a permissions-based platform would give EB perspective into available capacity in existing suppliers or potential prospective suppliers, as well as tracking existing purchase orders. So that, these little things that gain small percentages of efficiency are really monumental. When you talk to the folks at NAVC, these are the things that really get them, blows their hair back, and they go, ooh, these could really move the needle for us. Cybersecurity readiness initiative, I won't get into all the boring details, but the DoD has basically created, they've gone from what was NIST 171 to now a new security protocol called CMMC, Cybersecurity Maturity Model certification. Basically, it's expensive, it's confusing, and a lot of suppliers don't know how to deal with it. We've got some programs that we partnered with registered third-party, what they call C3PAOs, certified third-party assessment orgs. Those are folks that the DoD is trained and designated as assessment organizations to help companies get over the hump so they can meet that next level of cybersecurity requirements to be able to play in the industrial base. And the fear is that if folks don't know how to do that, or they're facing too big of an investment in that, they're going to go, yeah, you know what, if DoD work is only 5% of our portfolio, maybe we just drop out and we keep making stuff for automotive. Next to that, ecosystem mapping, stakeholder engagement, collaboration. That's basically our way of letting folks know whether you're at the OEM level, the supplier level, the sub-tier level, or in the kind of professional services level is who's out there? How do I find out what other manufacturers are out there? How do I find out what resources are available, what grants are available, what incentives are available? If you know, we got all these if there's one thing I've learned since being in this role over the last 4 years or so is there's tons of fantastic resources in the state. And I'm 4 years in, I'm drinking from a fire hose and still learning all the darned acronyms and funding that's available. And every day you find out that there's somewhere over here, there's an organization that's got hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars worth of grants for very specific purposes. And here are the eligible candidates that are probably hungry for that sort of stuff, but the two haven't connected yet. And so we try to, do a good job of mapping the ecosystem and letting folks know what's out there and how they can interact with those folks, as well as creating events and opportunities for those groups to connect. And a lot of those, again, are sort of technology solutions, actually creating interactive maps where folks can have platforms that they can search for a particular function, whether it's a grant or, a tax abatement, whatever it is, workforce programs that just so they can know what's out there and how to access them. Fourth, broadly, we call it integrated manufacturing, but it's basically how to usher using, again, existing resources, Connecticut Center for Advanced Technology, UConn's Industrial Tech Park and their IPB, Goodwin, Central Connecticut State University, all of these tremendous resources that are really custom tailored to get kids from whether it's the high school level, the university level, to look more seriously at manufacturing, science, technology, engineering, mathematics careers, and weighing those out against, say, a liberal arts degree. And basically creating that pull factor to draw kids into smart manufacturing technology, as well as allowing our existing manufacturers to start implementing what we kind of call smart manufacturing or Industry 4.0 technology. So whether that's digital modeling that allows for the original author at the OEM who's created a design to produce that in a file format that doesn't need interpreting when it gets passed out to a supplier, rather than it going to human and me having to redraw a 2D PDF that was done in 1975 for a cradle for a submarine, and then having my engineering team having to redraw that into a CAM file that's going to drive our CNC machine to build it, or a welder to weld it, or for a CMM machine to inspect it. Now there's model-based definition, all these wonderful technologies that basically eliminate the transposition errors from original author design to a production machine that can consume it, and then a inspection machine, a machine that can then inspect the original author, one single truth of the model. So that's a lot of these things are just gaining efficiencies and getting small to medium manufacturers in the area up to speed with what's possible. It's the art of the possible. You can do some really cool things, save on a lot of labor costs, reduce errors, and improve quality, and ultimately cut costs and make you more competitive as an organization. And then finally, industry learning, information services, outreach, and events. And that's basically our way of getting the community together. Introducing people, trade shows, matchmaking events, getting people who are maybe interested in doing work for EB in touch with a buyer that's maybe the one who might be putting purchase orders out for that product, and creating the download, upload and download between, say, a retiring. Right now there's a lady, Nancy, that works at one of our organizations. She's like the wizard of defense contracting, but she's 67. She's got grandkids and she wants to retire. You know, how do we keep that information in the network? So when she retires, we can hopefully provide an incentive for her, instead of working 50 hours a week, to come back for a healthy consulting fee and sit her down in front of a group of other, you know, manufacturing contract people and say, you know, hey, you know, run through a workflow, and then we can start downloading that information back into the network so we don't lose that expertise as people retire. So these are sort of our primary thrust areas, and those are really the ones that are oriented towards the submarine industrial base specifically. But our EDA proposal for offshore wind is essentially, you know, the mirror image of that's flavored for, you know, commercial maritime, offshore wind, and all the support industries, the O&M that's going to happen for, you know, 30, 40, 50 years to come if everything goes well, and allows us to sort of leverage the investment the state's made on the state pier, on attracting a lot of companies that are really considering, you know, moving to Connecticut, doing business here, expanding here. And I think where we tie in with you know, the Groton EDC and you know, as we put in these proposals, I think a lot of them require letters of support. A lot of those for us have always been very private industry centric. You know, we really want to make sure that what we're doing is not you know, an academic exercise, or that it's not, you know, purely municipally driven initiative, but that it's something that the members need. You know, most of our members are real nuts and bolts manufacturers that are on the ground, and they're experiencing real trouble, whether it's you know, workforce related, which is kind of always the case, that never goes away, or whether it's technology driven. They don't have access to the right technology to keep up with the Joneses. You know, a lot of these bigger companies that are, you know, kind of have the investment they can make into these big expensive technologies. Yeah, and again, there's resources out there. So we're really trying to create this network that's technologically enabled and then very manufacturing driven to make it so that we can further leverage the singularly unique supply chain we have here in Connecticut for nuclear subs. I mean, that's something that no one else in the world has, you know, and very few places in the world have. And you know, I think the dual applicability of these resources to both submarine industrial base and offshore wind are something that we can really leverage. And I think, you know, whereas we're competing for offshore wind work, you know, with every state from Maine down to the Carolinas, something we can boast is that we've already got a bunch of folks that really know how to do a lot of this work. You know, whether it's, you know, and a lot of it's not building the stuff. It's how to administratively handle the burden of really complex requirements, manufacturing requirements. And I think taking what is a very challenging world of DoD contract management, and then rolling that over to what we're inevitably going to be seeing with European standards coming over with a lot of these offshore wind developers. You know, there's a lot that we have here that other states do not have. And I think part of that's regional. You know, we're not Connecticut centric, Connecticut centric, we're not Connecticut exclusive. We have members, 100 members over 14 states, I think, right now, but primarily located here in Connecticut and Rhode Island. I think what we, you know, as far as the EDC is concerned, you know, we'd love to get y'all support for, you know, for our EDA proposal, which is coming up pretty hot and heavy here. Putting in some stuff for the National Science Foundation, DoD. But I'd love to follow up with y'all and be able to make specific asks as it relates to either letters of support. Some of the you know, opportunities that we're going after do require matches, and we're trying to be primarily private sector driven on matches. I think what we've realized is a lot of these institutions or the agencies that are administering these opportunities, they I don't want to say they'll take anyone's money as a match, but if they can see that it's coming from private sector, it's meaningful. You know, I think public funding is great, and we'd certainly be happy to get y'all support on a match or an in-kind donation. Like, for example, UConn is going to be matching us, but it's primarily in terms of their offer of office space, letting us use their facilities, tying it with their IPB, and quantifying that in a way that allows us to count that as a match contribution. But just letters of support showing that we're not a standalone entity here in Connecticut, that we do have the support of not only the industry, but also UConn, Town of Groton, City of Groton, City of New London, you know, showing that we're a member of the community, and that we're the programs that we're implementing are going to lead to, you know, hopefully businesses growing, hiring more folks, more people living in the area, working in the area. And I was trying to highlight, you know, I was the poster child for this. I got out of the Marines, went to UConn Avery Point for was studying engineering, And then realized that I was gonna have to move away from the coast where I couldn't spearfish off campus between classes. I couldn't kayak to school from Groton Long Point anymore. And they asked me to go up to stores for engineering. And I kind of said, well, gee, if I'm gonna move away from the coast, and I just want to look at some other places. I ended up moving to New Zealand, and I was there for 8 or 9 years, and then spent like the next hour long chasing America's Cup boats and working in all sorts of neat places. But I never felt, as a 25-year-old kid getting out of the Marines, I mean, it was obviously down in the lower downturn of EB not being what it is now. But I think I missed out on an opportunity to live somewhere really wonderful I mean, New Zealand wasn't terrible either, but I getting out of school, I didn't feel as though UConn Avery Point had what I was looking for, and we worked pretty closely with UConn. We're trying to get them to fire up their ocean engineering degree again to create workers that are actually suited to go to work at the two monstrous industries that are a half mile down the road from them. And I think working with UConn, working with the town of Groton, working the other municipalities and public and private stakeholders around here, we have a real tremendous opportunity here. And I think working cohesively both with us as an organization, and I think we sort of sit at a unique vantage point between both local and state and federal government, private sector industry, academia, and then the big OEMs. We get a really interesting perspective of what it's going to take to capitalize both on the submarine industrial base and our the opportunity over the next coming decades to really pull this thing off in terms of building the subs. And then same thing with offshore wind. If this is all going to come to fruition, it's going to take some pretty heavy lifting here that I think can't happen in the same way that in a lower tempo phase where you can kind of all elbow each other out of the way as private companies and hope to get a bigger piece of the pie. The pie now is so darn big that without what we call co-opetition in the NMC is and we realize that we're now seeing a lot of companies that used to be competing are now teaming on contracts and they're both seeing more revenue. They're both growing, hiring more people, getting more advanced contracts, more advantageous relationships with whether the Navy, EB, Newport News. So yeah, I think having the support of Groton is a huge part of that. And I think that's something as we start pursuing some of these bigger, much bigger, rather than going after hundreds of thousands, we're now going after kind of $10-20 million opportunities at the federal government level where we can really kind of make a more meaningful impact here and have more meaningful relationships with, UConn. I can go all day long about what we'd love to do at UConn and in terms of building a sort of a maker space, a technology integration lab, something where you can start training the workforce on the tools that are going to be on the production floor in a handful of years, with a degree program to support that, tying in with Grasso Tech and other tech schools. I mean, it's a heavy lift to get all this stuff done. And I think, us as a kind of somewhat fledgling organization is starting to kind of come out of our, startup phase and into, a real kind of traction and growth phase, with a lot, like we were just down in Alabama this last weekend with a bunch of the folks from NAVSEA and Blue Forge Alliance, which is the sort of federal entity that's in charge of the workforce development side of the submarine industrial base. And it's great to see that they're all on board, and the federal government and the state government and the Manufacturing Innovation Fund are really behind this. So I think, looking at the areas where we can work together and get more support from you all, now that we're here and developing this relationship. It's not like you all haven't supported us. I mean, George's been a big supporter from the beginning. Paige has been really involved all the way along. Sam's been great.
Good question.
Yeah.
Fire away, Jim. Thanks. So I can only assume you do work with Sector pretty closely.
Yes, sir.
Sector was here last month and talked about how they've got some more of these revolving funds and grant programs. Do you feel like those seem like maybe a possible candidate match for some of the firms that are in NMC that they can get maybe money or cybersecurity support through Sector?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And there's different, I think one of the challenges in this space is under every heading or subheadings, like under cybersecurity, there's assessments, there's implementation, there's audits, and we've worked with Sector. I forget their RISE is their program, and they're more of a implementation fund. So we're actually partnering with Sector where we're using what we call our cybersecurity readiness initiative which is a subset of DoD Defense Appropriations Bill request. And so basically what we're going to end up doing is and I don't want to get too technical, but a C3PAO, certified third-party assessment organization, is either pigeonholed, and oftentimes these are cybersecurity consulting firms or IT consulting firms that are well positioned, and maybe they've done banking regulatory stuff, or they've done things in other heavily regulated markets. And so like for NIST 800-171, for example, we partner with an organization called Monarch ISC, and they were one of the earliest designated C3PAOs. But once you take on the role of, if you engage a company, one of our companies over here, Proteroville, they were a division of Hitachi. So they had like 38 people in their IT department. And they looked at CMMC and they were all scratching their heads. And then we ended up getting these guys in there, not Monarch, to help them sort of decipher and demystify the new standards, which at the same time DoD was trying to roll out. They also hadn't fully defined what it is and when the contract requirements are going to come down. So it's a pretty hairy landscape for a small manufacturer to look at. Yeah. So once Monarch steps into that C3PAO role, they can't do any consulting. So basically we're going to sandwich our guys who might step in as an assessment organization, but you can't say, hey, here's your pathway to, here's where you stand now and here's where you need to go. We're also the solution. Yeah. And then we're also going to audit you at the end and certify you. So our program dovetails really nicely with Sector Rise. Okay. So we'll do the assessment, the initial assessment and audit, let them know where they stand, like in the SSP, a system security plan. And then following on with that, Sector Rise helps them fund, whether it's 20 grand, 50 grand, whatever it is with implementation. And then once they've gone through that, then the C3PAO Monarch can come back and help them get their actual certification so they'll meet the compliance standards.
Yeah, perfect. So, thanks. I don't know if there's other questions, but I just want to say I can only imagine a small manufacturing firm being completely overwhelmed and being like really relieved to find you guys as a resource or sector, whoever they come to first, and be able to kind of get compliant.
Yes, sir.
With that. So
yeah, and they both work really well together. I mean, like we don't see ourselves, we're not competing for, I know that sector is not really a member-based organization, but they're a tremendous resource. So when we bring, we bring folks together in this network, and we have regular meetings and events and things like that. And, some of them are fun and some are more technical and content driven. We just had boats, burgers, and beer down at the Mystic Seaport Aquarium a little while ago. And, it's an opportunity to take a bunch of folks that are in the same industry, throw some food and drinks at them and let them chat. That's where the magic happens. Out of those things could come a bunch of really cool contracts.
Yeah. Thanks, Walker.
Yes, sir.
Well, thank you for what you do. We're a small manufacturer and we actually work in this industry, and everything you said makes sense to me.
Awesome.
Right. Word for word. We live the nightmare that you're smiling while you be able to talk about it. Awesome. Like the whole list thing and the whole compliance thing, and us jumping in had us so nervous and so worried and like heartburn all the time, and had nothing to do with the product we're building, everything to do with how do we do it and how do we stay compliant with EB. And that's been the challenge. And I think it kind of, you being able to explain all that in 35 minutes and package it, I think most people would not be able to get that. And what my point being is, we're knocking door to door now. I haven't done that yet. I have talked to a few though, but we're not doing that. I'm not going through the whole process. I'm wondering if we get experts like this. We're making the face-to-face with people. We should be bringing them as a group to a meeting, whether it was a bunch of manufacturers like that Tim Tylaska has. I wrote Tim an email to see, could we get 25 people that would understand the language you just spoke? Because you spoke Chinese to most of the people probably.
Sure.
That watch us. But all the acronyms, we say, why do we use them? Because you would still be talking for another 3 hours if you set out that acronym. Sure. but it's in
we hand out a glossary and
it is. But I think in front of the right people, and that's what I get nervous about. I knock on a door and someone's saying, well, what do I get? Because I really shocked somebody telling them that we got $150,000 vending machine and the state gave us $75,000.
Right.
And these are people that have no idea that happens. I knew because it was I knew because I saw it and people came and we talked. But there's people missing opportunity that are in that park. And I don't think we get everyone together like the person that owns a restaurant. We knock on the doors like the Tylaska Park
Yeah.
And then get them in front of him, and then we'll just be the contact point.
Yeah.
And not do so much of the, sometimes I think when we do digging, there's a lot of stuff you said that I understood it, but I wouldn't know what program was available to help them if they said, sure, how do you help me this way? But no, I really appreciate it. To see someone excited about this, we get anxiety about it. I don't even like talking about it. Like when we go to lunch, we leave the building, so we specifically don't have to talk about NIST or filling out some new.
Oh, yeah.
But thank you.
Absolutely. No, that's appreciate pleasure.
Yeah, and examples are always good. You'll understand in layman terms, if you come up with examples that help, clarify what
Sure.
the process is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Question. So, when you're out there looking at different communities and looking at the supply chain around there, is there something Groton in particular does exceptionally well to support the supply chain here, or something we could do better? What advice would you have for us? Related to, obviously, we're here to promote economic development.
Sure.
Any feedback you have from your expertise on.
I think my one big observation is we have so many great resources, both here in Groton, and not least of which is a critical mass of manufacturers and a big OEM. That's two big pieces of the equation right there. I think the big observation I have is tons of tremendous resources, but very little coordination. And that's not the fault of the town, but I think it's an area, fortunately, where the town, the Economic Development Commission, folks like us, university, can all do a better job of looking, just zooming out and looking at, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? And it's not, the reason that we haven't got 500% more throughput from the supply chain supporting the submarines yet is not because the manufacturers are lousy or the owner didn't invest properly in his workforce or training, or it's because all of these different acronyms. I'm still learning new acronyms every day in this role, and we have all of these resources, but you don't have a lot of aggregators that are sort of demystifying. The air traffic control. Okay, you said, did you guys get supplier development funding? Was it
It was actually an MVP state program.
Okay, the
voucher. Yeah. Yep.
Yes, their program's great. It's amazing. It's sort of like the EB problem. When I first stepped into this role, it was like, wait a second, you're telling me the problem is that EB needs a bunch of stuff and we have a bunch of suppliers that produce more stuff? It's like, problem solved.
EB almost should invest in, they should send therapists to the vendors first, because honestly, you lose sleep. And then you start, just what you said earlier about, if it's, we're definitely not in the realm of only 5% of our business being defense.
Sure.
We're more most manufacturers are 90%.
Right.
Invested. So we have to learn.
Right.
But there are a lot that are the 5% that are just saying no.
Screw it. Yeah.
And we're actually going to be forced to tell these people that we rely on that we need this, and that, and you have NIST. And then if it's really only 5% of their business, so now we're actually taking on more capability of buying machines that used to do stuff that we used to be able to get because we can track. And we're seeing a lot of people fall off the face of the earth that are extremely and unbelievably talented.
Right.
That no one's going to have access to.
Right.
And they're going to be on the other side of the door. And I don't know, for people to understand what that means for the industry, it's not like building houses. It's not like when we say, oh, we just need to do this. It's so technical. And some of the people that have knowledge, again, if you're 60, you're like, do I really want to invest in NIST? Or can I just plug along doing my stuff for the guy that needs a part for his lawnmower? But I don't know how you get there. I think you have a huge hill to climb. I mean, together we'll climb it.
Yeah.
And it'll be fun, but it's going to be sickening too.
Yeah. Like you mentioned earlier, in terms of examples, one of them, for example, we've got a couple companies around here that were each building different components of they call it IPHO, intensifier power hatch operating system. And it's basically the ejection seat for submarines, which nobody ever has to use. But it's basically, if all the power goes on the sub, it uses external seawater pressure at depth to intensify a pump that drives a worm drive that pushes the hatch open on the submarine against seawater pressure. So it's how the sailors get out. I mean, who knows what happens after you get out of the submarine at 1,000 feet? That's the story. Yeah, and they've got a fantastic tank up at the sub base up there for the training for that. But we used to, or EB used to buy, it's like 1,800 parts to build this thing, and it's pumps and valves and solenoids, electromechanical controls, all sorts of stuff. And from EB's standpoint, each one of those nuts and bolts and valves and seals and everything else they got to buy is a contract they have to manage, quality, inspections, the logistics of shipping it, where's it going to be stored? And then at some point, someone's got to take all those bits and put them together, and then it's going to sit on the shelf and stay compliant. Some of these things have to be in controlled environments and then it's got to go onto the boat, and you hope that it hasn't gotten lost in the acres and acres of EB's facilities.
Yeah.
And now we've got a couple of companies, RDSI out of Pawcatuck here. It used to be Hitachi, now it's Proterial, and they're basically together building what is one of the most critical systems on the submarine, but they're delivering it to EB as a single component, as a single assembly. And for EB and the Navy, those are exponential gains. Like those are the types of things. Hey, we used to have to manage 18 contracts to build this thing. Now we manage one, and that's freeing up their buyers, their manufacturing processes. I mean, it's a really big win. And another one is a cabling system. It's the most complex cable in the entire Department of Defense, OE 538 cable. And it's, the antennas you see sticking out the tops of subs and all that. It's, it's got this big, 200 wires, cables, fiber optics, and all sorts of stuff. And we're producing that right here now. That's within 8 miles of this building right now. And now they're the sole supplier for that to both EB and to the Navy for, ship refurbs. And those are monumental gains. They came from, a couple members chatting about stuff over, okay, we're talking about CMMC compliance, and a big part of that, like you were talking about flow downs. I'm sure you guys outsource a lot of stuff, and I think the immediate capacity that we can actually unlock in the supply chain to support the building of the submarines is not getting more manufacturing companies in. It's actually letting you guys take on more of the work and growing your sub tier. So it's your supply chain that we're developing, not EB's supply chain necessarily. You're growing the sub tiers. But I think everything you said is there's a lot of stuff that gives you a headache and keeps you up at night. But we get a lot of these companies. One of them was Chapco over in Chester, really capable sheet metal shop, and they have all the machinery. They got a new awesome Trump-Trumatic 6000 big old machine that can do all sorts of stuff. EB knew they needed it, and it was like two things: it was their NIST compliance and their JCP certification that were holding them up. And they're looking at these first contracts come in, and they're like, what the heck do we do here? And you plug them in with someone like you guys, or with Fertil, and you talk person to person, contractor to contractor,
or vendors.
Who's that? But you get them involved, and you plug them in. It's the mentoring program, mentor protege program, where you take someone who really knows what they're doing, and you take someone who's kind of new to the space. And instead of them having to weed through thousands of pages of compliance requirements and all sorts of stuff, you plug them in and sit them down over lunch with a beer or with someone who knows what they're doing. And all of a sudden they're like, oh, okay, out of these 8,000 pages, there's 4 that matter. I can handle that. So yeah, there's a lot to be done. But
all about know-how.
Absolutely. And it's the tacit kind of tribal knowledge that's tough to transfer.
Yeah.
So thank you guys for your time. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, look forward to channeling, like Joe said, a lot of the resources we have here, connecting businesses to benefit from the vast knowledge that you have in this area. I mean, that's like you pointed out, we have such resources in this area. We just got to connect it better. So we have to be a better aggregator and support what you're doing. I'm very grateful for your time and everything.
Thank you all very much.
Did you supply any information before I arrived?
I didn't. I've got this, but I'll bring in. I've got a little
something else.
Yeah, I've got a couple of things I can send out and disseminate with you all. Got an overview and a little highlight of some of the initiatives we're pursuing.
That'd be great. Yeah.
I'll not get us on your email list. I'm already on it through Hillary. So.
Good deal. Perfect.
But yeah, you get a lot of information through that.
Excellent.
Just
Wonderful.
Thank you all very much. Appreciate the time.
Beginning of it, but
yes, ma'am.
Interesting.
Awesome. Thank
you so much.
Appreciate it. Okay.
So I was late. It's a chair. I'm taking care of a foster baby. I had to wait for my husband to get home to pick him up in the parking lot so I could come in.
Oh, you left him in the park.
Yeah, I did. He's in the car playing with the steering wheel.
Times the kid's fine.
He kind of rolled. It's 4 months.
Oh my God.
He kind of rolled over, so he's safe.
Yeah. 4 months.
Yeah, he's good. Happy.
So reports, staff reports. Sir?
Did you want to do chair then
Nothing.
staff? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really have anything.
I'll go through mine quick and we'll go to
Okay,
liaisons. Yeah,
great,
thank you.
okay.
All right, so staff report, our division update is in your packet or wherever you got sent, so feel free to refer to that, if not now, then later. But the one thing I just four things I just want to point out. So one of them is the small business pivot grants. This is funded by the ARPA funding, and we're hoping to go within the next week or so to make that those application period open. So we'll make sure that we send that out to you by email. It was in the newsletter that went out today, just in terms of trying to get people to understand that it's coming. But when it's official, we will get that to all you guys, and it's something that you can mention. The intent of it is really so that a business who maybe they want to adapt their business model because of new conditions, but they're missing either technical know-how or some kind of equipment or, you know, digital setup or something, that they could take some money, really to make them more resilient to future changes. So, but all the information will be in, you know, content that we send out to you. And again, we never expect you guys to like be able to give them a dissertation on site if you're doing a meet and greet.
Yeah.
Really, it's like, hey, go to this website, grotonbusiness.com.
Yeah.
Log in, you know, we'll get your information. There is money available, you know, loans, grants, as we talked about with sector. We just want to get them plugged into the resources we have available.
Yeah.
And I will follow up with all of you when that goes live. And you might find it on greatergroton.com. I think that went live today too, sir, just in terms of the back. So that might be on there now if you want to check it out, but we'll email you. The other one, and as John Burt, the town manager, had mentioned, is that we want to keep Groton Heights and Pleasant Valley on track. And that's the hope. The hope is that we can get out and launch an RFP solicitation so that we can start getting some ideas about proposals about what might happen at those locations. And we have had a window where we've been showing folks there's obviously a lot of interest. The developers see the opportunity in this property, and, you know, they see the demand and they see how they can be a partner with the town. So that's been great that we've had some walkthroughs, but hopefully, you know, we're just doing our best at the staff level to keep that on track, and hopefully that'll unfold, and we'll keep you up to date with that. And that's all I had.
Okay.
Thanks, bud.
Thanks. Questions?
Is Groton Heights, were there issues there, environmental issues there, for abatement and such? Was that one of the issues that came up, the cost involved?
That's correct. So, you know, when we get proposals, they're going to have to itemize the kind of the financial, you know, offer.
Right.
And all that's going to have to play into it. And certainly there may be opportunities for state money. We, you know, kind of tried to push on that and didn't have a lot of luck at one point, but who knows what's possible. But certainly they understand the value and whether they're willing to make the investment. You know, we certainly had enough interest in people looking at it to make us believe that they're not intimidated by it at this point. But they'll structure something that works for both parties. That's the hope.
Just making sure.
Oh, you bet. Thanks.
Sir?
Copies. I don't know if anybody needs one. You already have one?
I
gave a couple other ones away. Well, thank you. Big thing that's happening on the sub base next Saturday is going to be the USS Hyman G. Rickover SSN 795's commissioning, which is a huge event on sub base. There's going to be all kinds of dignitaries there. The governor, I think Secretary of the Navy might be there. Don't quote me on that, but there's going to be a lot of important folks there, as well as the family members of the sailors and members of Admiral Rickover's family. His wife's going to be there. So it's going to be a big event. We're real excited about that. Should be our newest boat. Of course, Admiral Rickover, if you're familiar, he's the father of the nuclear Navy, developed the Nautilus and many other ships afterwards. So it's actually the second ship after him. First one was the Los Angeles class boat, the SSN 709, which was in service from 84 to 2006. So this is the second one, but there's a picture of it there, and it's she's a beaut. So be happy. She should be coming up to the base here in the next few days, I think. So excited to see that. We had a nice ceremony, Bells Across America ceremony there a couple of weeks back. Rang the bell, how many times? Quite a few times for many members that were lost, and really in all the services. Dedicated a stone to the field. We have an area now, we call it the Gold Star Field, and just a nice place for folks to go and you know, think about those that have lost. Yeah, so those are always touching ceremonies. We have like 2 of them a year. So and the last thing I'll just report on, the sub-base galley got 5-star recommendation, which is the highest rating in the Navy, which is kind of a neat thing. They open up once a month for everybody on base to go in there and eat, and it's always pretty good. I'll tell you, it's usually pretty good. They have different themed meals, and it's a nice place for us to go and have lunch and chat a little bit and you know, and visit with each other. So it's kind of cool. So that's all I've got, I guess.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you.
Okay.
very much.
Thank you. Yeah. No problem.
Any other business? Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Great meeting.